So welcome to my first Formula 2 video of 2019. It's been ages since we spoke about Formula 2 on this channel. I covered it somewhat last year. We did a few Formula 2 reports as part of Let's Talk F1 series that I did last year. We did a few separate videos roughly talking about Formula 2, but it wasn't a mainstay of the channel. And this year, that's something I really want to change. Some of you know that I've swapped over to Sky this year because live F1, really, that's the main reason. But as a benefit of that, I'm also going to be able to watch Formula 2 properly this year rather than hunting for some dodgy streams online that I've had to do for the past couple of years. So for me this year, Formula 2 is something that I'm really going to try and keep my eye on once again. Like I say, I've really tried in the last couple of years, and I think I've really got used to the teams, how they operate, and some of the drivers and some of the, I suppose, veterans, if you want to call it that are still in the sport this year. I've been able to see them progress, and drivers like Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, George Russell, I've been able to see them progress through their junior formulas and make that step up to Formula 1, which is actually something really nice and a really good reason to watch Formula 2, because this year we have some big names. We've got some big dogs in Formula 2 this year, and like last year, I think it's going to be a really close fight for the title. 10 teams, 20 drivers, and to be honest, it's Formula 2, so we're probably going to see a few driver swaps throughout the season. Today, I'm going to be talking about all of them, every single one, every team and every driver, so you might notice the time. It's a little bit longer than our usual videos, but nothing too crazy. I did notice as well, after I'd finished all the graphics for this video and just about to start to do my voice recordings, I noticed that Formula 1 very kindly thought they would do one as well, but just, just for benefits and just for personal pride, I did say I was going to do this yesterday, and it's something I've been working on for quite some time. So if you love Formula 1 and if you really want to get into Formula 2 this season, you can consider subscribing if you would like. I'll be covering every single race in depth all year long, and also at the end of this video we're going to have a little chat about predictions as well. So lots to cover, so let's stop rambling, let's get into our first team. And kicking things off, we have Carlin, last year's Constructors' Champions. This is the team that was host to Lando Norris last year, a team that I'm predicting to do quite well, and as we'll see in a moment's time, they've got quite a strong lineup, quite a unique lineup for Formula 2, not necessarily a youthful lineup, a thrilling lineup, but a strong lineup, and potentially could have a really good year. Last year, the team was known as Carlin, no change there, and they had Lando Norris, the runner-up in the championship last year, and Sergio Sette Camara ending first overall in the Constructors with only one win. However, in only 8 races last year, they weren't on the podium. So a really good job from Carlin last year. More consistent than, I suppose, flashy with big #1 race results. But Norris getting second overall in the championship was a big stride towards that first place in the Constructors. This year, they've got Louis Delatraz and Nobuharu Matsushita. That's a difficult name to pronounce, and it's not the only one on the grid. Louis Delatraz is one that I think could be an outside shot for the title. He's taken part in 2 seasons so far of Formula 2. Last year he was 10th overall, driving for Charouz, the Ferrari young driver team, but his best result in Formula 2 is only 2nd place. He'll be looking to try and get his first win of his career this year, and really with Formula 2 drivers more than 3 seasons, more than 2 seasons, it's very unlikely they will continue. But alongside him is Nobuharu Matsushita, sat out last year, did Japanese Super Formula. He's done 1 season of Formula 2 back in 2017, 3 race wins, all coming in the sprint races on a Sunday. He didn't impress in Super Formula, so he's back in Formula 2 this year, but it really is a make or break year for the Japanese driver. Needs to try, if he ever wants to try and push into Formula 1, he needs to try, like Delatraz, to be winning and in the title hunt this year. But for me, the team battle, I think Delatraz just edges it, and I think perhaps could be in the fight for the title. Next up, a team that I think is going to be under a lot of pressure, especially with a big fat media spotlight on them this season, is Prema, or Prema is how I like to pronounce it. Just depends how fancy you feel like being for that particular day, but Prema is what I'll be referring to them as across the season. Last year, their lineup looked like this: Sean Gelael and Nick De Vries. Nick De Vries had a pretty strong season, with Gelael being a little bit lacklustre over the course of the year. 3 race wins was actually quite a good job for a car that was not always the quickest, and with Gelael really being the number 2 driver that year, it's a surprise that they've actually kept him on for this season. He is someone who is known to be a Formula 1 test driver for Toro Rosso and can really help develop a car. Is he really World Championship material even in Formula 2? I don't think so. But alongside him, I think is the biggest name we've had in Formula 2 for a very long time. Mick Schumacher joined the grid for 2019, the current Euro Formula 3 champion, I suppose the final ever Euro Formula 3 champion, son of 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher. This guy is quick. I'm not going to put too much pressure on him and say he's going to win the championship straight away, but I think he's going to be quick. I think he's going to be up there. Maybe I think in his second year is more realistic. Gelael, 15th overall last year. His best result is a second place, which came last year in Monaco, of all places. So it was a bit of a carnage race that helped him out a little bit. But I expect Schumacher to win that one. Now on to one of my personal favourite teams on the grid is Dams, a team that for a little while had a little say in Formula E as well. This team last year were a little bit quiet, went under the radar a little bit, was host to now Nissan Formula E driver Ollie Rowland, but last year they had Alex Albon, who obviously went on to Formula 1 this year with Toro Rosso after being dropped from Red Bull. He went into Formula 2 last year, not knowing if he had a seat, but he also had alongside him Canadian Williams sort of third and test driver Nicholas Latifi. 5 wins for the team last year, 4 for Alex Albon and just 1 for Latifi, means that Latifi keeps his seat, and in comes Lando Norris's teammate from last year, Sergio Sette Camara. He's also a McLaren young driver now, added to the McLaren Young Junior programme at the end of last season at the Brazilian Grand Prix. He is Brazilian in actual fact, but he's now had 2 seasons of Formula 2 under his belt. Last year was better than his first year, however it was his first year where he got his only win to date. He's another driver that I think is going to be up there in the title hunt this year and perhaps could fill in a seat in 2020 for Formula 1, but he's really going to have to big out the big guns in Formula 2 this year. Alongside him, Nicholas Latifi, another one who's had 2 seasons in Formula 2. He's had 2 wins overall in his career. One of them was in the sprint race back in 2017 Silverstone, which I got to see, which is great. Finishing 9th overall in the standings last year, he will want to do better this season. Moving on then to Formula 2's version of the Pink Panthers, BWT Arden. Another difficult year for them last year. Not anything too amazing for the team. They were able to pick up 1 win courtesy of Maximilian Günther, another driver who is headed over to Formula E, who now is not in Formula E at this current moment in time. He's been replaced by Felipe Nasr due to a contractual agreement. They also had Dan Ticktum in that race, in that team for a couple of races at the end of the season, and Narai Fukuzumi in that car, who really had a mega scare at the beginning of the year. But I think this year they've got a really exciting lineup, and one of their drivers I think is going to be hot on the tail of that championship. I think he's going to be right up there, and you may have already realised that the proverb I use there, he, or the pronoun, English is never my strong suit, in the other seat is a she. We've got a Formula 2 woman driver, which is great to see. Tatiana Calderon, the Sauber as was, now Alfa Romeo test driver, joins Formula 2. We've not seen a lady in Formula 2 for quite some time, so that's really positive. She hasn't been tempted by the W Series, and she's going to try and push now to try and get a Formula 1 seat. But alongside her, current GP3 champion Antoine Hubert, or Anthony. I've always called him Antoine, but Anthony Hubert. I expect him to win the driver battle, but only, or the teammate battle, but only because I think he's going to be one of the favourites for this championship, and is someone I've really got my eye on this year. Also, Trident. Another team that had a disappointing year last year. They've never really been a top fighting team, have Trident. However, another team they are that this season I'm really excited to see their lineup. Last year, you can see, last in the standings, a very lacklustre season. The only team to not be on the podium last year were Trident. 5th place 3 times with Miani, Ferrucci and Lorandi. It wasn't a great lineup for them. However, this year, they've managed to bring in 2 new drivers. Giuliano Alesi, son of former Formula 1 race winner Jean Alesi and Ferrari driver, and also Ralph Boschung, the Swiss driver who's had a couple of seasons in Formula 2, a little bit of experience that I think will help Alesi this year. Giuliano, obviously, in his first season last year in GP3, only managed 7th, did pick up a win in Silverstone, I believe. Someone who I think can do well in Formula 2. He's got to try and be sensible, I would say, in his first year, because I think he's another driver, perhaps like Schumacher, that really is going to try and shine in his second season. And I think if Lando Norris should have stayed, and if he did stay, he would have been one of those drivers that really excelled in his second year. But Ralph Boschung goes into his 3rd season of Formula 2. His best ever result is a 7th place. I don't see great things from him, so I'm actually going to say that Alesi will have the edge this season in the Trident team battle. Now, new team on the grid, new team alert, almost a Renault Junior team, not really, but they have elements of a Renault Junior team, and I don't just mean that because they are yellow. This team is, I say a new team, but it's more of a rebrand. Last year, known as Russian Time, a synonymous Formula 2 team. A big shock that they left the grid this year. However, it's great that a team has been able to take them over, and it's great to see a flashy yellow car on the grid, finishing 4th overall in the Constructors. Last year, they picked up 4 race wins, 3 for Artem Markelov. He's going to be missed this year on the grid, and 1 for Takasuke Makino. I'm impressed that I managed to say that in the first take. This year, they've had a complete switch. Luca Giotto joins the team, another driver that I quite like in Formula 2, and Zhu. Now, he's got a really difficult first name to pronounce, and as you will see, following Formula 1 can be very, very straightforward sometimes with names. Formula 2, not so much, and Guanyan Zhu, I believe is how you pronounce it, will be in his first season of Formula 2. Last year he was in Euro Formula 3 and finished 8th overall. I'm not expecting big things from him, to be honest, but he is a Renault young driver and reserve driver, so keep an eye out. He might surprise a few people, but this guy, Luca Giotto, 46 races, 2 seasons under his belt. Last season finished 8th. 1 win so far in his career. I expect him to win this team battle, and maybe could be another one that's maybe an outsider shot for the championship. Now, you're not mistaken, that does say what it says on screen there. Sauber Junior team. Don't ask me why they're now in Formula 2, but for this year, Sauber, and this is Sauber F1 team, have now made the step down to Formula 2. Obviously, they're not in Formula 1 anymore. Alfa Romeo has fully taken over that team. But last year, this team was known as Charouz Racing. I really struggled with that pronunciation as well. They were a Ferrari junior team, and they had Louis Delatraz, that's now a Haas reserve driver. He's now at Carlin. Antonio Fuoco is not in Formula 2 this year, so they've had a complete switch around of their lineup, and there you go, there's the full team name, Sauber Junior Team by Charouz. That's their actual team name, by the way. So if you thought Racing Point, Force India Sport Pacer was a long one, this is a long one. They've got Callum Ilott joining the team, another driver that I'm excited to see. Callum Ilott last year was 3rd overall in GP3 in a really competitive grid. I think this guy could maybe be up there, but again, I expect him to be there in perhaps his second season. He's done 2 Formula 2 races so far in his career, but that was just almost a one-off weekend at Silverstone last year. More of a surprise is the guy alongside him, Juan Correa. 14th last year in GP3. I'm surprised they went for him to have him in the car. The American perhaps could spring a few surprise results, but I expect Callum Ilott to have the edge over Correa this season. Now, another beautiful looking car this year. Another one backed by Renault Campos. They had a pretty awful year last year, just like Trident as well. Struggled to really be anywhere near any sort of pace for the majority of the season. But a new lick of paint, a new sexy lick of paint at that as well, maybe that can give them the edge this year. Their lineup last year looked a little bit like this: Luca Giotto, Roy Nissany, and that is right, Roberto Merri, former Formula 1 driver. Formula 1 drivers can't go back to Formula 2 if they've completed more than one season. Merri completed half a season, so he's been back in Formula 2 for quite some time now. There was a one-off podium for the team last year, but really it was never looked like a great year, finishing 7th overall. A complete switch around this year with Boccolacci joining the team. Has had a couple of races in Formula 2, but I suppose the big name really here is going to be Jack Aitken. But Dorian Boccolacci, 8 races so far at the end of last season. He also competed in GP3, where actually he finished 10th overall in GP3, which doesn't look great, but that's only half a season's worth, because for the second half of the season he came over for Formula 2. 7th overall is his best race result so far, but he looks good. He looks quick. Alongside him, Jack Aitken. A lot of people were disappointed with this guy last year, finishing 11th overall, only one race win. His teammate last year was George Russell. This guy's a big WTF1 favourite and has a lot of fans and support, and I hope Jack can really do well this year and put a season together that was perhaps a little bit more consistent, but I do expect him to have the edge over Boccolacci this year. Now, the team that Aitken was racing for last year and George Russell was ART Grand Prix. An easier name to say, this one, and it's not art, it is ART. A team that really did well last year. 8 wins overall, the most of any team last season. 2nd in the Constructors, and that was mainly down to Jack Aitken being 11th overall in the standings, and that's generally why they didn't keep him this year. Russell, he's moved on to Formula 1. Perhaps he would have been better off staying in Formula 2 if there wasn't the rule that if you win the Formula 2 championship, you can't do another season. So Russell wouldn't have been able to go back into Formula 2, but probably it would have been quicker than his Williams Formula 1 car. They have got in a very quick lineup: Nikita Mazepin and Nick De Vries. Now, let's start off first with Nikita Mazepin. Tested for Force India, when they were known as Force India, back in 2018 in winter testing. Was runner-up to Antoine Hubert last year in GP2. I need to keep calling him Anthony, not Antoine, but that'll slowly click in my mind. I think he could surprise a few people, Mazepin, but the big guy, my favourite, I think, at the moment for the championship, Nick De Vries. 2 seasons so far under his belt in Formula 2. McLaren young driver, last season finished 4th overall, but was only about, I think, 10 points off Lando Norris in 2nd place. Really, really close. 4 race wins overall in his career in Formula 2. I expect him to be fighting near the front this season. Expect him to have the edge on Mazepin. And our final team to talk about today, MP Motorsport. Now, it's obviously hard to predict Formula 2. It's a much closer field than Formula 1. However, I expect this team to be dead last in the standings, which is very harsh for me to say. Not like me to be so harsh, but 4 drivers the team had last year: Merri, Boccolacci, Boschong and Nico Carey. 8th overall in the Constructors. 1 3rd place. Not great for the team. This year, they have got a bizarre lineup. An absolutely bizarre lineup. First of all, I've saved him for last because I cannot pronounce that name to save my life. We'll talk about him in a moment. But Jordan King is a crazy announcement for Formula 2. 66 races in Formula 2 and GP2 combined. Crazy enough to think that this guy was racing in GP2 2 years before Charles Leclerc even got there. So how on earth he's been decided to be called back up, I don't know. 2 wins, but 66 races in Formula 2 is almost unheard of. Alongside him, Raghuathan didn't even race last year. I don't really know what to say about MP Motorsport. It's almost as if I don't even know, which is probably a great place to finish, because I just don't have a clue with MP Motorsport. But To round it off in something I'd like to be a little bit more optimistic about is championship hopefuls. For this year, I'd love to say Schumacher, I'd love to say Alesi, I'd love to say Jack Aitken, but I think realistically, Nick De Vries is the favourite. I think that's pretty clear. He looked really racy last year, and I think this year, joining ART, I think that's going to be the bit of confidence booster he needs to try and push him on for a championship. I think Sergio Sette Camara is another really good shout for world champion this year. Maybe Jack Aitken, although I just said that'd be nice to see. Maybe he could be another one that's an outsider chance. However, for the past 2 seasons, a rookie has gone on and won it. And with Alesi, Schumacher and Antoine Hubert in that grid, stop saying Antoine, Dan, because someone is going to have a go at you in the comments. With those guys joining the grid, it's going to be another year of Formula 2 where no one really has a clue who's going to be winning. And that's why I love Formula 2. However, I'm just realising now, going into this season, some of you have already put a few comments out saying that you love seeing the Formula 2 stuff, which is brilliant. Always puts a smile on my face, that does. But you're not really sure what Formula 2 is about. So I'm thinking about maybe doing a Formula 2 guide in the next coming days. Nothing too long, perhaps 10 minutes, just quickly explaining Formula 2, because I know for some people it's a little bit confusing with the 2 races, one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday, and the reverse qualifying order. It is a little bit bizarre, so maybe I'll do that in the coming days. But that was your Formula 2 grid for 2019. Let me know in the comments below, who do you think is going to be world champion? I imagine a lot of Mick Schumachers I'm going to see in the comments, but it's not a bad shout because that guy was hella quick last year, and he will be very quick this year. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe. There's been loads of you joining the Grosjean army at the moment, so if you fancy it, please feel free to do so. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.